Welcome on Speak Your Mind on Gold FM. I'm your host, Shami Lochenlal, and my guest on Speak Your Mind is the Permanent Secretary for Economy, Makarita Konrote. I'd like to welcome you on the show. So it's a much has been talked about the budget, and I know that the budget will be debated in the Parliament next week. So it's a 4.3 billion budget, the biggest budget ever announced by the Fijian government. What is government's main focus in this budget, and what are the government's priority areas?
And Attorney General alluded to in his budget address, this budget is not just an annual plan of government to spend resources, but a part of a long-term strategic plan. And as has been the case in the past few budgets, government in this budget continues to focus on strategic areas such as infrastructure, health, education, social protection, and also on reforms, in particular civil service reforms. So in the area of infrastructure, the budget is focused heavily on continuing these 4 laning projects that have commenced. It's focused also on ensuring that rural roads are maintained and that there are more rural roads to ensure that all our communities, there's increased connectivity between all our communities. And another important aspect in terms of our spending on infrastructure is building resilience. As you know, with our COP presidency and the position that Fiji is in at the moment, as with other Pacific island nations, and as we speak, there's also an important event going on at the moment focused on climate change. So part of the infrastructure spend in this budget is also focused on building resilience for our infrastructure. So in terms of our roads, our jetties, bridges, our waterways. So not only are we investing in maintaining and increasing the connectivity amongst all our communities, we are also investing in building resilience. Of course, the other big sector, big spend in the budget is on education. Government is continuing to invest in building our human capital. So ensuring that our people, our young people in particular, are able to support the growth momentum that Fiji is currently...
Like you just mentioned that the education sector has received the budget, and they've got the highest budget allocation. Why?
Well, as I mentioned, not only do we think a lot of the youth hold a lot of the economic potential in the economy in terms of the future, how we move forward. So investing in education not only, as I mentioned earlier, strengthens the human capital, but it enables our young people to not only become active members in the economy in terms of supporting the growth sectors by being employees, but also becoming employers themselves. And I think this is another key aspect of this budget, where we have made provisions to assist our young people who see themselves as entrepreneurs and as contributing positively to the economy, the opportunity to be able to do so. So in the budget, we have this new program called the Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme, whereby the target group, of course, is between 18 to 30 years old. And these young people can apply and receive a loan of up to 20,000 to start a business. And there will be, of course, a panel made up of the private sector, key private sector leaders that will not only assess their applications in terms of viability, but also provide mentoring that so often our small businesses don't necessarily have access to.
Right. So while we're talking about education, tell me the idea behind the government's initiative in having high school consultation, and what suggestion or submission from the students have been incorporated in the budget, because I know the Honourable Minister for Finance, the Attorney General, had been visiting schools and tertiary universities to get their input. Has that been incorporated in the budget,
Yes,
the ideas?
Thank you, Shami. In fact, my team and I were part of the consultations all throughout. And for all of us, it was an enriching experience to hear firsthand from the students what they want for themselves, how they see themselves in the future. And a lot of the policy changes to the TELS program is a result of feedback that we've received from not only the high school students who will in the next year or so become tertiary level students, but also we consulted the tertiary education. We had consultations at all the three universities and the various campuses, and the feedback that we received has helped us to structure or to refine the policies to ensure that government's assistance for education is responsive to what the students and what our youth want.
So how much of their submission or suggestion has been incorporated in the budget? Are we going to see a lot of difference? Will students or the tertiary students be happy to see that being incorporated?
Certainly, I think they will be very happy with the changes that we've made. A lot of the feedback we received were in respect of how they wanted to receive their allowances. And at the high school level, certain Year 12 students in particular mentioned that, the FNU in particular for engineering courses allowed Year 12 students.
Yeah.
So you didn't necessarily have to complete Year 13 to enter into university for certificate level courses for engineering. So this is one of the amendments that we've made so that the TELS will cater for students coming out of Year 12 that want to go and undertake certificate level courses, particularly in the field of engineering.
Okay, thanks. We'll take a break now, and we'll request our listeners, since this is a talkback show on Speak Your Mind, Gold FM talkback show. So we encourage you to call us and ask any questions in relation to budget. Our number is 3220906 or 3220907. After this break, we're going to talk about how will this budget empower the Fijian and help the economic growth, and where will the state borrow to cover the cost of the new budget. So I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind program, Talkback Show on Gold FM, and my guest is the Permanent Secretary for Economy, Makareta Conrote. So we're talking about this 4.3 million budget, which is the biggest budget announced by the Fijian government. So where will the state borrow to cover the cost of this new budget?
Thank you, Shami. So historically, government or the Fijian governments, including present government, have always run a deficit budget, meaning that the expenditure is always higher than the revenues we collect. And so the difference, which we call the net deficit, is financed through borrowings. So, of course, we have a mix of domestic borrowings and also foreign borrowings. We've always maintained a ratio of 70 to 30% of domestic to foreign borrowings, give or take plus or 5. So in terms of the 2017-2018 budget, the deficit is around 4.5%, equivalent to about 499 million. So this is the amount that government will need to finance through domestic and foreign borrowings, as I mentioned earlier. And in terms of debt to GDP, that's around 47%. There's always often a focus on debt and debt sustainability. But I think two important things that we need to always focus on is first of all, the ability to service debt. And with the case of government, we've never defaulted on any of our debt repayments. And the other important aspect is where is this funding going to? What are we using? What are we spending the money on? In our case, our revenues, in terms of taxes and non-taxes, fees and charges the government levies on the services that it provides, all of our operating, which we call our operating revenue, all of our operating revenue is more than sufficient to cover all of government's operating expenses.
So what you're trying to say is that it is safe for Fiji to be in that level of debt. So what are the advantages or disadvantages of this much debt?
As I mentioned, I think the way to look at it is where we are spending the extra financing.
Yeah.
We are not borrowing to cover our operating expenses, which is the daily running, day-to-day operational costs of government, salaries, wages, all of the overheads. We are not borrowing to cover this cost. What we are borrowing for is essentially to build the productive, to add to the productive capacity of the economy. And by that I mean, what I mentioned earlier about what we're doing in terms of infrastructure, what we're doing in terms of health, education. All of this add to the productive capacity of the economy. It supports entrepreneurship. It supports businesses, enables them to expand their business, not only for existing businesses to expand, but for more and more Fijians to come into the mainstream economy, whether they are our youth or new small businesses to come into the mainstream economy and support that growth.
So while you're discussing about this, that while we're talking about the advantages, some political parties have made comments that because of the huge amount of debt in which the country will go, it seems that the generations to come will be paying off this debt. What would you like to say on that?
That's not necessarily true. As I mentioned, as the economy grows, the percent or your debt as a percent of your overall value of the economy in terms of gross domestic GDP, as we call it, the total value of all the goods and services, that reduces. So your ability to borrow increases. The more you spend it on productive areas, such as infrastructure, as I mentioned. The other thing, in the last 7 years, we've had consecutive growth. This year, we're set to see the 8th year of consecutive growth, and the next 2 years, 2018, 2019, projected to go also at around 3%. In terms of our reserves levels, we've never seen the current reserves levels that we have at over 2 billion. So the economy at the moment has been at a position of strength. And
the tax threshold has been changed from 16,000 to 30,000. How will it help to stimulate Fiji's economy?
Well, what it does, the simplest answer is that it puts back more money into the pockets of Fijians, Fijian families. So that gives them more room to improve their standard of living, to have better access to services. Added to that, government already has a number of programs, assistance in terms of education, subsidies for electricity, water. So all of this, help to lift the lifestyle or the standard of living for the ordinary Fijian. So with the additional income, families have more choice about how they use that additional income, whether they want to spend it on their families, on day-to-day expenses, or whether they want to start a small business with that additional income. The decision is theirs, but what the tax increasing the threshold does is empowers Fijian families and Fijians to have more say about how they use their income.
Thank you. You can call us on 3220906 or 3220907 on any questions related to this budget. So moving on, 321 million has been given to the Health Ministry. So after this break, we'd like to know that is it enough to improve the health facilities? And if you want to call and talk about Ministry of Health's budget and what services would you like to see improved with this ministry, you're most welcome to call. We'll talk more on this budget with the PS economy soon after this break. Welcome back on Speak Your Mind. We are talking to the Permanent Secretary for Economy, Makareta Conrote, and our telephone number is 3220906 and 3220907. The much-awaited budget is out, and this budget will be debated in the Parliament next week. But if you have any questions regarding this budget or in relation to this budget, please feel free to call and ask questions. So we were talking about the Health Ministry's $321 million budget, which is a big amount given to them. So what are some improvements which we will see in Ministry of Health, and is it enough to improve health facility?
Thank you, Shami. So you've correctly mentioned that the health budget is around 321 million. That's an increase of about 77 million over the current financial year's budget. And so the focus for the Ministry of Health in the new financial year is the recruitment of doctors and nurses. So we've provided funding for additional 350 doctors and about 200 nurses.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of how the doctors are being recruited, there's a three-phased approach. In the first phase, we're targeting the subdivisional hospitals and health facilities to ensure that they have the right personnel. We've recruited about 44 doctors, and these are for all the subdivisional hospitals. In the next phase, we're looking at recruiting around 143 doctors, again to support frontline services and other operational services of hospitals and health
So while you're
facilities.
talking about specialized doctors, are we looking at hiring doctors or getting specialists from out of Fiji, or this will be doctors who will be trained in future?
Yes, of course, we don't produce enough qualified doctors, and to get specialists takes, at a minimum 10 years to train someone to become a specialist. So we are looking outside Fiji for specialist skills that are currently not in the country, and of course through government's education program TELS, we are ensuring that there's a steady stream of students that are being trained in the medical school.
And just recently, Minister for Health was in India recruiting doctors or hiring. Was it part of this?
Yes, this is all part of the plan to ensure that we have the right skills and the specialist skills that are needed at all our subdivisional and major health facilities.
Ministry of Health had many queries or questions in relationship to the response in service delivery. How will this see an improvement in this sector?
Okay, as you know, just before the budget, the Honourable Minister for Health launched a customer care line. I think the number is 157, and the main objective behind that is to receive complaints from the general public about if they're not being given the level of service that they want. And so the idea is to get that feedback direct from Fijians, and that will assist the ministry to better plan their resources and how they handle the complaints that are coming through, and improve the service.
So does this budget which has been given to the Ministry of Health, are they going to look at services in rural areas, mostly islands and areas where health facility is not up to standard, about Western Division and other greater areas?
Yes, of course. So in this budget, we've provided for a number of capital projects. The intention there is to not only upgrade and maintain the existing health facilities, but to construct new facilities, as you've correctly pointed out, in rural areas and our maritime areas as well.
Earlier, you had mentioned about major projects which has been planned for roads, bridges, and jetties around the country for the 2017 and 2018 financial year. So, what are these major projects? We've got Vatuanga Bridge, which is currently being constructed. I think after that, we'll be moving on to the Stinson Parade.
Right.
How about other areas in Lambasa and Lemhi area, plus jetties? What plans are there?
Okay, thank you, Shami. So the team has put together a comprehensive list of all the projects that will be funded in next year's in the next financial year. We have this information uploaded onto our website. But if the public want a hard copy or printed copy of these flyers, they're most welcome to visit the ministry or to send us an email. And I believe this email was also mentioned in the Honourable Minister's statement, which is budget consultation at economy.gov.fj. So if any member of the public wants more information or has any questions about the budget, they're most welcome to send us an email or come visit us and get a copy of the flyers. So we have detailed information on where the projects, all the roading projects, renewable energy projects, and also water. So there's detailed information available that they can get access to.
Thank you. And if you want to ask any questions, please do call us now on Speak Your Mind, 3220906 and 3220907. So the new 2017-2018 national budget has allocated 42.6 million for rural electrification program. So tell me more about this electrification program, as in which rural areas and time frame to complete the project.
Okay, so as I mentioned, Shami, all this, the details of government, the budget allocations for renewable energy are now available online. There's a whole list, and they can get access to that. So the focus is to continue to provide access to electricity for those that are off the grid, whether that be through solar systems or extending the grid connection, getting more communities connected to the main grid. So previously, communities were required to pay a certain amount in order to get connected to the main grid. So government has done away with that, and now electricity connectivity is being fully funded by government.
So there is a hope for rural communities in outer islands.
Yes.
We'll take another break, and then after that we're going to talk about increasing squatter settlement and how will this budget help those living in squatter settlements. You're currently on Gold FM, Speak Your Mind. We'll be back right after this break. Welcome back on Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, and my guest today on Speak Your Mind is Permanent Secretary for Economy, Makareta Conrote. We're talking about the 2017 and 2018 national budget, which was announced last week, and this budget will be debated in the Parliament next week. So, Makareta, let's move on with this national budget. We have seen increase in squatter settlement. If you look at the Suva and Nosuri area, there's been more and more squatter settlement and increase in this area. So what is in the budget to address the issue of increasing squatter settlement?
Thank you, Shami. So in the Department of Housing, we've allocated funding for ongoing relocation of squatter settlements to formal settings. You'll note that the Langi Langi housing project, that was one of the relocation projects that government has funded. And so in this budget, there are funding for similar projects. So government is focused not only on relocating informal housing into formalizing housing for this particular group of people, but we're trying to increase home ownership in general for all Fijians. We've noted that home ownership for most ordinary Fijians is quite low at the moment. So this budget is also focused on that, as was announced in the Honourable Minister's budget address, that we have this new development, Matavolivoli site. Government will now partner with the FNPF to provide strata titling type housing, and that's targeted at people, different price points for different income levels. And the idea is to build integrated communities where we have a mix of people living in a community, and also there's opportunities for other services to be part of that community. So Matavolivoli is one area that government is focusing on, strata titling, home ownership. Of course, we have the ongoing government assistance for first home buyers. So if you're buying your first home, you're entitled to $5,000, and if you're constructing your first home, then you're entitled to $10,000. Also in this budget, through the support of the Reserve Bank, the Reserve Bank has also announced a facility whereby they will lend to the commercial banks at an interest rate of 1%, and the banks then on lend to customers at a maximum of 5%. So this low-cost financing can also assist people to either construct or purchase their first home. So added to that, as I mentioned, this government assistance for housing. Also, similar to what we're doing with at the Matavolivoli site, we're also going to work with the Public Rental Board, looking at affordable rental housing. We've also received technical support from institutions like the World Bank, IFC in particular, who are helping us to structure these programs to ensure that the end goal is to make housing more affordable.
I think that's a great initiative by the government for first-time home buyers or those who are purchasing a land. But coming back to the squatter settlement, do you have enough, do people come forward to talk about the fact that they're in squatter settlements and buying a house or a land is expensive for low-income earners? Is Fiji or the government looking at helping the squatter settlements in future? Are there some plans for them apart from first home buyers? These are first home buyers are people who have got a permanent job, right. So they can probably there is some kind of qualification attached to that, right? But what about those who are in squatter settlements?
Yes, as I mentioned, there are programs within the Ministry of Local Government, Department of Housing, and there are sites that have been identified that will continue the relocation of squatter settlements.
So if there is someone who wants to move from squatter settlement or wants that area to be given to them, how do they go about contacting is it the local government they should be in touch with?
Yes, so local government can assist them. Of course, there's the Housing Authority and the Public Rental Board, but the local government would be the agency to contact.
Okay, thanks. So much has been talked about the sugar industry in the past, and this subject has been politicized a lot. So how will the budget make any difference to the sugarcane farmers? How does the future of sugar industry look?
Okay, so the key focus in terms of all the programs directed at sugar in this budget is to bring down the cost of production for farmers. As you correctly mentioned, there's been a lot of talk about sugar and whether the price should be $100 or whatever. But I think the what we're trying to do here is to assist farmers to bring down their cost. So if their cost of production reduces, then of course they get better returns. So government is providing, has provided and will continue to provide subsidies for fertilizer. We now have a new subsidy program in this budget for weedicides. In terms of transportation of cane from the mills, I think from Penang to Rarawai, that too we have an allocation of about 5 million.
So these are something new for farmers in this budget.
Yes, so that that assistance was provided this year and it will continue next year.
So what's new in this budget for the farmers?
As I mentioned, the subsidy for weedicides, that's new. There's also an allocation of about 2 million to encourage farmers who want to start growing sugarcane. So new farmers, that's a new allocation there, and also we've continued to provide for mechanical harvesters. And also for ongoing assistance for planting, and so all of this is aimed at reducing the cost to farmers. Again, we've continued the sugarcane development and farmers assistance. We've actually increased that to about 15 million in the next budget. In the current budget, that's around 11 million. And of course, cane access roads, government has continued to fund that to ensure that upgrading works continues and there's better, drainage and all of those issues.
So we'll take a break, and after this break, we'll like to know more about the sugar industry. And if you have any questions to ask about this budget on Speak Your Mind, please do call us after this break. Our phone number is 3220906 and 3220907. Welcome back on Speak Your Mind. So you had mentioned earlier about the Young Entrepreneurs Scheme, which the government has introduced. How do they go applying for this?
The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Tourism is the implementing agency for this particular scheme. There is, of course, an application process, and I think once the new financial year kicks in, the ministry will disseminate the application process. But as I mentioned, there is, of course, an application process. There is a qualifying criteria in terms of the age. And the excess, of course, is 20,000. And we will have a panel of private sector leaders to not only assess the applications, but to provide, advice and support mentoring if that's required.
Okay. So going back to the sugar industry and cane farmers, just lately Fiji Times had carried a number of stories on meeting with the cane farmers, and the way it was forecasted according to Fiji Times, it looked like the cane farmers' future was very bleak. Does the government have any plans to upgrade the mills or carting of sugar by rail, etc.? What does the future of sugar industry look like?
Well, as
opposed to what Fiji Times had said?
Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, Shami, the focus is to reduce reduce costs for farmers, so that at the end of the day they get more money into their pockets. The returns they make from planting cane improves. And as I mentioned, transportation costs, there was some concern about the closure of the Penang mill, and as I mentioned, we've allocated about 5 million so that farmers will not have to bear the cost of transporting cane from Penang to Rarawai
which
mill.
was a major concern by the
Exactly,
farmers, right?
exactly. So there will not be any, the farmers will not need to fork out any expense at all to transport cane from Penang to Rarawai.
I think that's great news. So, what is in the budget to ease public transportation? We have seen an increased number of cars on Fiji roads, which is, of course, affecting the road itself too. I know there has been budget allocation for Fiji Roads Authority, and they'll be working on roads. So, how is this budget going to ease public transportation?
Okay. I'll refer to something that the Honourable Minister, talks about, or the example that he makes during our budget consultations. In Fiji, it's not fashionable to catch the bus. With more people with income levels increasing, young people or young families want purchase a vehicle as a sign of them moving up in terms of the social ladder. So what we're trying to do, of course, it'll take an attitudinal change in mindset, whereby people opt to catch public transport. And I think for that to happen, there's obviously a need to revamp or to improve the quality of the buses that we have on the road. And so in this budget, we in the lead up to the budget, while we were doing the background work, we had a couple of meetings with the bus operators, and so in this budget, we've introduced a new incentive whereby bus companies that have a gross turnover of 1.5 million and below will be able to import brand new buses at duty free. Not only that, for taxis, hybrid vehicles that are being imported for taxi purposes, that also has zero duty on that. And for normal cars, we've also reduced the duty on that. So these incentives are targeted at improving the quality of public transport that we have on the roads. And the idea there is to, attract people, ordinary Fijians, and professionals alike to, in future, opt to take the public transport as opposed to driving their vehicles, because now you see on the roads most cars just have one passenger. The other thing that's been talked about is carpooling.
Yeah.
So these are some of the early steps that government is taking to improve quality of public transport, and in the future, obviously, there will be other policies to look at how we can encourage more people.
Okay, thanks.
To
So
take
the minimum,
public
let's talk about minimum wage. The minimum wage for unskilled workers will be increased to $2.68 per hour from $2.32. So was this considered through public consultation?
Yes, of course. There is a comprehensive consultations undertaken by the Ministry of Employment. They did engage an expert to review the wage, and so all the consultations that has resulted in this determination, which we have now, which is around $2.68.
Yeah. So when we talk about unskilled workers, we're talking about people who are not degree holders or who are not specialized in any fields. Does it also apply to school students or tertiary students, mostly tertiary students who are pursuing a degree? Will they also fall in that bracket of $2.68 per hour as in unskilled workers?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, we have also incentives in the budget for employers to take on students during breaks. So we have tax incentive for employers who want to employ students part-time.
Mhm.
I don't think that
I don't think they'll fall in that unskilled bracket. So, is there any policy in place to monitor that employers don't impose the same rate, which is the $2.68, which is for unskilled workers? So they.
Well, I'm sure the Ministry of Employment, who's the ministry responsible, will of course be monitoring this aspect and will ensure that employees are in fact not breaching the employment regulations.
So people have been talking about that this budget is people's budget. A lot of people have been very happy with this budget announcement. How will ordinary people benefit from this budget?
Okay, well, Shami, a lot of the initiatives that government introduced since 2014, such as free education, that continues. Free education subsidies, as I mentioned, for electricity and water, that also continues. In fact, we've improved the subsidy for electricity. Previously, the threshold was set at 95,000 kilowatt hours. And of course, the household income, there was a target of 30,000, so it was means tested. And the way the subsidy operated currently, if a family exceeded the 95,000 kilowatt hours, they did not get a single benefit from government subsidy. So we've actually changed that so that we've increased that now to 100,000 kilowatt hours. So if a family with a household income of 30,000 uses, say, in excess of 100,000, they still get that benefit up to 100,000, and then beyond that they pay the normal rate.
Thank you, Makareta, for coming on the show on Speak Your Mind. And it's a great budget, a very good budget. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a 4.3 billion budget, the biggest budget ever announced by the Fijian government. A lot of people are very happy. They're looking forward to this budget. And as mentioned earlier, this budget will be debated in the Parliament next week. So I look forward to seeing you next week on Speak Your Mind, and I'll be trying to get other ministries on Speak Your Mind to discuss about their budget. So see you next week on Speak Your Mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shami.